The Pieces Lie Where They Fell by Evil Humor. Edited and co-authored by Anon E. Mouse Jr. Read for you by My Name is R. Chapter 23 Windbreaker. Windbreaker grumbled as he stepped forwards, trying to look past Knight's rump to see where the tunnel was going, as well as keep ahead of Vixley's horns. "Hey, Windy, you don't have any room to whine," Vixley huffed from behind him, squatting low as she moved forwards, using her hands on the walls to steady herself again. "You guys can just walk all normal-like. I've got actual legs and—" "Aftopunai!" she swore again, sitting on her butt as she went to pull her horns out of the ceiling again. "Wind, doso moi tu potoi soy tora." Rex?" Wind slowly turned his head away from the fuming Minotaur. What did she say? "Gah!" He squawked as he was nearly pulled off his talons and paws when Vixley, after freeing herself, tugged his saddlebag open, pulled out one of his bottles, and started to chug it down. His wings snapped open, and he had to bite back a snarl of pain as his wing tips hit the edge of the tunnel. "I believe," Knight snarked at him, no doubt grinning on his stupid face, "she was saying that she wanted one of your drinks." "Geez, I never would have guessed that, Knight," Wind grumbled as he turned his head to check the bag, and which bottle she took. He let out a sigh as it was just one of his lighter ones. No big loss there. "You okay, Vixley?" "Yeah," she grumbled, corking his bottle and placing it back into his bag. "Just really not a fan of this cave walking. Don't get me wrong, I love a good maze as much as the next door, but I like to be able to walk." "Hey, do you think I like this?" Wind said to her. "I hate being underground." "Likewise," Knight said, fluttering his wings. "I cannot recall a single winged creature that enjoys the lack of air on their wings." "Except for changelings," Rex said from up ahead, sniffing the way forwards. "They are quite fine with tunnels and the dark, while most equines are not." "Huh, I didn't know that," Viddle said as she padded her way behind Rex on all fours, with seemingly no effort at all. Windbreaker would have killed for that in the past, being able to shift from walking on all fours like he always did, to walking upright like Vixley, and holding it for a long time without getting a massive cramp in the back. Looked like a very useful ability. "At least this is an artificial tunnel, and doesn't have any odd enchantments like some of the natural caves I've read about," Paige said, from next to Nightblade. "Some of the stories I've heard tell about caves that can shift around on you when you least expect it, or will try to fool you with optical illusions. And I think I heard about one that had a cursed pool that would pull you under and trap you if you touched it. But I did a scan when we first came down here, and this tunnel just has the same ambient magic as the surface. Nothing dangerous to worry about." "That's good to know," Vixley replied as she ducked her head again. "But I still wish they were a little taller." She looked contemplative for a moment. "I think I've heard the one about the shifting maze before. Didn't some Tor get out of it by using a ball of enchanted string? Or was it a youngster with clear sight could find the right path?" "I've heard it both ways," Paige answered back. "Some of the older stories changed as they were retold, and no pony's quite sure which version came first." Vixley nodded. "That's happened back in my home country too. I think it's pretty much universal, actually." Windbreaker smiled as the two females chatted back and forth. After everything they'd been through, their amiable talk was a breath of fresh air, and it helped keep the mood light as they continued onward. "Say, Rexy," Vixley called up from behind him, causing Windbreaker to jump forwards a bit as she tilted her head downwards, his tail wrapping around his leg. You're the smart one here, do you know? Sadly, I do not, and I have not had much inclination to research on such topics, Rex said, tilting his head as he stopped walking. Although, discovering how the tunnel can shift on itself would be fascinating. Speaking of fascinating, Vittel began to speak before turning her head to look at him. Hey, Wind, got any water in there? Windbreaker had to blink and think about that. I'm actually not sure, he blushed as he reached into his saddlebags to see if he actually carried the stuff. Windbreaker did his best not to growl at night when he heard the colt snicker something to Paige, and finally pulled out a sloshing canteen of what he hoped was water. Here is some, I think. He then held it out, and Vittel quickly claimed it with her tail hand, bringing it around to drink. She wrinkled her nose, telling him it was either stale water or something else. Thanks, Windy, Vittel grimaced as she wiped her mouth before she moved her attention back to the diamond dog. So, Rex, care to share with the rest of us what your element thing is? Ah, yes, Rex said, puffing his chest out a bit. Windbreaker could tell the diamond dog was doing it due to being around other griffins all his life. When I contacted my virtue, the lady, she informed me of two matters: that her real identity is Rarity Bell, and that the element we share is that of generosity. We desire the greatest good for others, understanding and inspiring them with our selflessness. He smiled, proud of himself. Some of what she said actually reminds me of what your people would call agape, Vixley, the selfless love of one person for another, not born out of a desire to possess, but from an open heart, and the desiring of the best for others. Vixley let out a low whistle. Wow, that is a good one. It sure is, Windbreaker said in awe. Though, wouldn't anything to do with love fall under the purview of Miyamura Cadenza? There may be some overlap of the two, Rex acknowledged, but as I recall, her purview was primarily that of romantic love, or eros. He contemplated. Oh, that reminds me, Windbreaker. I asked Rarity about Applejack's brother for you, but unfortunately I couldn't get a name. She did promise we would find out before all this was over, though. She also mentioned that she had a younger sister, whom she cared about quite deeply. And from what she said, I suspect that others of the virtues also had siblings we will learn about at some point. Really? Vixley's ears perked up. Cool. Wait, her name was Belle? Paige asked, causing every pony to look at her. I know of a noble family called the Bells. They helped me start my children reading project at the Great Library with their donation, and the priests of the Lady endorsed it. Paige trailed off, deep in thought. And the inn where Vittel, Windbreaker, Vixley, and I were staying at was called Carousel Boutique, Rex said in an odd tone. The diamond dog then blinked when he noticed every pony was staring at him. That was the establishment that ran on the ground, causing every pony to do the same, with Vixley grumbling behind him again, and no doubt rubbing at her odd legs. What are the odds that we four would stay at an inn that has the same name as one of the businesses run by one of the virtues all those years ago? And that I would meet one of their descendants so many years ago, Paige said, nuzzling against Knight. Two, actually, Knight said, wrapping a wing around her. There is Polished Apple as well. Didn't yours say that her descendants pissed her off? Knight turned his head towards Windbreaker, who nodded his head. That's really odd. I mean, what are the odds, Rex? Vittel asked, rolling her head. Not great, I would imagine, Rex said, rubbing his chin. The apples are quite numerous, I know, but I'm not sure how great the chances are with the bells, as I don't have them." "Quite low," Knight said, shifting on his hooves. "The bells are an incredibly small and minor noble family. They exist in a very small enclave in the west, and there are a lot of minor noble families in the west. My family is one of only a hoofful of major families that actually live in that area of Canterlot." "Perhaps there is a spirit of fate that has been nudging things," Vixley suggested. "Given a spirit of balance exists," she shrugged, doing her best not to overdo it. "It's a possibility." "Perhaps it is balance that's doing it?" Windbreaker suggested. "But that would mean it would have been aiding our foe for the same time," Rex said, causing every pony to frown. "If it has, then we'll just have to be even more careful than before," Vidal said firmly, before forcing a smile onto her face. "But going back to what you were saying about family members..." Vixley raised a hand before grumbling as she grazed the ceiling of the tunnel again. "Now I'm wondering if any of us might have met some of their other relatives without knowing it," she commented. "I'll have to keep an eye out for any tar with the Pie name. If they're anything like Pinky, they'll probably be a real hoot." "And these elements, they've only really popped up when you guys did something related to it," Vidal said. "Paige spoke to that changeling mare we saved, and Vix Lee got us all to laugh. Wind..." "I told the truth to Fair Scales about what I wanted," Windbreaker said, before nodding his head at Rex. "And you got yours by giving your shop up." "Kindness, laughter, honesty, and generosity," Paige said. "That means your element or Knight's is next, when you do something related to your element. Something really meaningful." "That's why Applejack wouldn't tell me anything," Windbreaker snapped his talons. "What we do has to have some sort of deep purpose on our end, or it won't count." "That's incredibly important information, Knight." Wind," Knight said, in his sharp, noble voice. "Anything else you neglected to tell us?" Windbreaker scratched his chin. "Not that I can think of. I already told you what she warned me about. That thing that's even worse than what we're dealing with now, that Balance would have to let out if she gave me too much information right then. But that's it, really." "Right. Thanks for bringing that up, Knight," Vidal snorted, rolling her eyes. "Really helps me at night to know what we're dealing with is not the worst thing out there, and it could end the world." Windbreaker saw the Bat Pony's coat bristle at the comment, but instead of biting back, he simply glared at her. "Look, guys," Vixley said from behind them in a soft voice. "I have no idea what the last two are, but considering how easily it took us to get ours, this should be child's play for you two to get your elements. You just need to be yourselves, and we'll beat this baddie before the week is over. So, Vidal will get hers for leadership, and Knight for his..." Windbreaker trailed off, the joke in his mouth dying as soon as he saw the glare, realizing he might be overdoing it for the touchy colt. "Whatever the element is, we've seen them being off from what the virtues were known for. The Stern Warden was known for being, well, stern, not kind. The Wise Oracle was known for her master planning due to the ability to see the future. But Pinky was a real jokester from what Vix Lee is saying. The Stallion of Dedication was known for being dedicated to a single task, not being an honest pony. As well as a mare," Windbreaker said, scratching his head. "And the whole generosity thing is just a tacked on for nobles to ease their guilt when they see the poor." Wind couldn't help himself but glare at Knight, remembering how every 6 weeks the priests of the Lady would give their donation to the hatchery that was more or less just the basics, and no real thought was put into it. So while the warrior was known for leading her thunder warriors into battle, and the Magi of Stars was known for being close to the goddess Celestia and being the most powerful unicorn in history, I'd be really surprised if their elements were for fighting and magic. So, something twisted off of fighting and leadership? Vidal ventured. It can't be magic, because I don't have magic and Knight's a bat pony. I do have magic, but it's subtle compared to the unicorn magic, Knight said at her, his fangs poking out before he gulped and looked away. But you are no doubt correct. If magic were an element, it would have either been Paige or Rex, who are magically talented. And I have to admit, you're going to be the Magi of Stars heir, because in all of the stories, and this is with the scrolls of the Magi of Stars, always having her as the leader of the group, which I am not. Geez, couldn't say that a bit nicer, eh? Vidal said, with a huff and a roll of her eyes. But yeah, I guess if things are going to line up like that, it doesn't leave much room to imagine which ones we're going to be the heirs of, Knight. But whatever yours is, I guess your sword fighting won't be worth much to getting your element. Knight seemed like he was about to say something when Rex spoke first. Definitely not as the spark to gain your element, Knight. Whatever the warrior was like in life must be something other than fighting, and you have to be capable of acting like her, just on a greater scale. And I feel safe knowing that I've got you watching my back, Paige said, nuzzling him, which seemed to calm him down again. Yeah, if we need someone taken care of, we'll just shove them in front of you, Knight, Vidal chuckled as they began to move again, with Knight's face dropping again, his tail flickering angrily. How much further do you think it is, Rex? I am not sure, but I do believe I see a bend up ahead, and Vixley should appreciate this as it seems to slope downwards, Rex said, with Vixley letting out a sigh of relief. Oh, thank goodness, she groaned. Next time, we're going through something that makes you guys walk all funny like that for a while. And how are you going to do that, Vixley? Vidal called out from the front. Make us dance? 'Cause that would only hit Paige, Knight, and Wind, as me and Rex can easily shift back and forth. Shut up and let a girl dream, okay? Vixley pouted playfully. I'll think of something to make you all suffer the agony of cramped legs. That got every pony laughing, Wind covering his beak with his right wing to hold back his guffaws. After Paige got her laughter under control, she turned to face the Minotaur. If it is that bad, we can take a longer break. Nah, I'm okay, and the slope should make things easier on me, she said, shaking her head and letting out a yelp of pain as she hit it again. Arrgh. Windbreaker just rolled his eyes and focused on walking forwards, doing his best not to stumble as they walked on the downward slope, as the last thing he wanted to do was crash into Knight and knock every pony over into a big mess. Finally, Rex called out a halt after a period of walking, with every pony crowding around him. The Diamond Dog waved them back and pointed upwards to a dangling cord and placed a finger to his lips. He then tapped Vidal to come forwards, as the cord was just tall enough to be out of his reach. Vidal rolled her eyes and used her tail hoof to pull it down with a staircase extending downwards, almost on top of them. Every pony squawked out in surprise as Paige backed into Knight, which caused the Bat Pony to crash into him, and caused Wind to smack his head into Vixley's lower region. Hey, watch it, Windy, Vixley growled, trying to shove every pony off of her, but finding no purchase. We just met and all, but buy a girl a drink first, and I expect a good one from considering how much you've got in your pack. Again, aren't you trying to stop drinking? Knight grumbled from his chest, trying to push himself off. Then he paused. Wow, these feathers are really comfortable. Thank you, Windbreaker grumbled back as he tried to struggle to his talons. Knight and Page heavier than what he expected. I use an imported shampoo from the Windy Whistles line based in Cloudsdale Mountains. Once this is over, I might just mention this to Mother. She is always looking for new business expansions, Knight said as Page hopped off the Bat Pony. And Knight extended his wings to push himself forwards, which was a lot better than the other option to push his hooves downwards to give him a lift, considering where Knight's hooves were. Off you go, Vixley said as she shoved Windbreaker off of her, with him nearly crashing into Knight's back, his beak grazing the colt's tail, with Knight jumping in surprise. Rex, Vittle, want to move upwards so we can get out of this tunnel already? With a nod of his head, Rex began to climb up the stairs, with the Owizodolus following behind the Diamond Dog. Page and Knight came behind them, with Windbreaker next and heading up the steps as fast as he could. At the very back of the line, Vix Lee muttered about how happy she was that she could now stand upright. Windbreaker had no idea where they were, but by how much Rex's tail was wagging, it could only mean good things. Alright, what Vix Lee said at the beginning was, "Wind, give me your booze now." Again, I translated it into this alphabet before reading it because I don't read the Greek letters. I did know the words agape and eros before this, though. I don't remember the third one. It's family. There's romantic. That agape, which I've always heard in the context of God, and then something for family. Familial love. I don't remember it offhand. Let's see. For this chapter, we have a lot of discussion, but nothing I feel the need to comment on. Alright. See you later. Thanks for listening. Have a good time, everyone. Bye.